And what I found is going to blow the lid off of anything that you think you knew about toddler sharing. I remember the first time my then 18-month-old wanted a toy that was in somebody else's hands. We were at a group play date. There were a bunch of toddlers. There were veteran moms. There were new moms like myself. And my child started, in true toddler fashion, stomping his feet and flailing his arms towards another child that had the one plastic hammer in the room. At the time, honestly, I felt pretty flustered and like my parenting was on show for the crowd. But it did raise this question in my head of what is the best practice when it comes to facilitating or learning to share in the toddler years, and what is a developmentally appropriate expectation that I can set for my child. So like the child development nerd that I am, I grabbed some hot coffee and went to go dig into the research. And what I found is going to blow the lid off of anything that you think you knew about toddler sharing. Make sure that you stick around till the end of this video, because I'm also going to be sharing the #1 mistake that I made that actually set us back on learning to share. A lot of the research in previous generations looked at sharing in young children with the question of what can I do to make my child compliant when I tell them to share with someone. One of the research papers that I found that was so interesting from the 1960s, they took a group of toddlers and they divided them into two groups. In the first group, they would give a child 2 marbles and they would ask the child to share one of the marbles with another child. And if they did this, they would give them a lot of verbal praise. Well done, you're a brilliant kid. And in the second group, what they did is they gave them 2 marbles. If the child complies and obeys the direction to share the marble, we will give them bubblegum. I mean, I just don't understand why, out of all the things they could have chosen, they chose to give toddlers bubblegum. But anyway, they gave them bubblegum, and you can guess, the children that got the bubblegum as the reward for sharing were more inclined to share. But in more recent years, research has kind of changed that question and is more asking, are there things that we can do or environmental conditions that set children up to be more willing to share? Now, this kind of looks at the heart of sharing instead of just following a command. And what they found is, yes, there are things in the environment that really help facilitate children aged 4 to 5 and up in terms of sharing. Some of these things are that children are more willing to share if it's a friend. Children are more willing to share if they've been shared with first and there's a sense of reciprocity. They are also more willing to share if they feel seen and acknowledged and that the parent in the room is sensitive to their needs as well. But that is for children that are 4 to 5 and up. What they found is that children under the age of 4, these environmental influences don't have as much impact because actually the brain scaffolding to be able to share isn't in place for our young children. It's not that they're not choosing not to do it or they're not being influenced enough into sharing, but it's that they actually aren't yet able to share because of their stage of development. Just like we know a newborn baby cannot walk, we can kind of expect and understand from development that up until age 4, children don't have the scaffolding to be able to share. If we break down sharing and we look at what that long-term goal would be, it wouldn't just be sharing, it would be generosity. It would be the ability to give of themselves. If we look at this in a kid setting, say something at school, it would be something around the lines of your child noticing that their friend doesn't have a sandwich for lunch or they forgot their lunch at home, and your child offering to give half of their sandwich to their friend. In this example, we see a lot of firstly ownership, that your child understands that the sandwich is his and that he is free or she to give that away. We also see a sense of safety and security, that the child isn't coming from a place of scarcity, but they understand that they will be able to replenish their sandwich supply at a later stage. And then if we break that down, this idea of generosity with ownership and with the sense of security, there's also a skill within sharing that is turn taking, as well as an understanding of social norms for behavior. It's really important to understand that your child's difficulty with sharing is not about your parenting. It is so easy when we're in a group setting, and just like I was that first time, but I mean, it always happens like this, right? Whenever we have difficulty with sharing, we are with friends on a play date or with other children, and it's really easy for us to kind of put that back on ourselves, as in we are not doing enough or we're not a good enough parent about something that is completely developmentally typical for our children. When we put ourselves in the state of stress, what we actually do is put ourselves into our more primitive or downstairs brain kind of thinking. This makes it hard for us to access things like problem solving, like our own impulse control, and like our ability to feel empathy. It's almost like we make ourselves a toddler brain. Leading a toddler isn't necessarily the way that your child is going to be learning how to share. So what can you do? In the toddler years, because that brain scaffolding isn't in place yet, I think that it's really great to focus our efforts as parents on just setting up those social norms for behavior. Just like learning to drive, learning to share is kind of the same. We need to give our children a framework and rules for the road before they ever start doing it. For us, our rules for the road depend on the environment that we're in. It's very normal and typical that the ways that we engage socially, like for example in a library compared to at a music concert, or the park compared to home, may be different. And while there are certain situations in our children's lives where yes, the ability to play does depend on turn taking, so for example going to the arcade or waiting for the swing at the park, this is very much a turn taking norm that is established. I don't think that turn taking is the thing that has to be adopted when it comes to toys. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, we want our children to have a sense of ownership over the things that they are engaging with. Just like when we talked about generosity, how that sense of ownership is really important, we can start fostering that and rebuilding that scaffolding in the way that we approach toys. When a child is holding something, it is in their hands, so it is for them to be playing with. The second reason is because we are really serious about play. When we allow our child to continue playing without constantly being interrupted by somebody else wanting to take that toy or play with that toy, what we do is actually protect their concentration and really further their developmental abilities because they've been allowed to really engage deeply. And the third reason is because it takes away the option of snatching. It takes snatching kind of off the table. Let's be honest, most of the time when there's a spat between children, whether it's siblings or not, and there's a toy involved, someone is snatching. And for the far majority of the time, it's actually the parent that snatches from the child. This kind of teaches our child or models for our child that snatching is okay. But if our rule is that the child that is playing with the toy has the toy, then snatching is kind of off the table. So in our house, this looks something like if one child wants what another child has, it's saying to them, know that you really want the toy, but it's in your friend's hands. You can either offer him something to trade, or you can wait your turn. The trading is a great option to give to your children because it does teach them a skill of kind of negotiation, but it also is for us as parents to hold the boundary that if the child says no, they don't want to trade, that we're not allowing our child to snatch or try to take it from them, but that they are learning to wait their turn. The biggest mistake that I made when it came to this is that I wasn't consistent in terms of the people. It's easy for our children to feel like our rules of our home are a punitive measure that is put on them instead of a social norm and the way that we do things. This can come into play when there's a friend over for a play date that wants your child's toy, or a baby that's trying to snatch at your child's toy. It's so important for our kids, in order to build that sense of ownership, to feel that just as we protect somebody else's concentration and somebody else's playtime or opportunity to be with a toy, that we protect theirs as well. So yes, this might look like on a play date saying to your child's friend, and yes, even if their parents are there, it looks like he's playing with that right now. You can either offer him to trade, or you can wait until he's done. If your child's brain development and understanding your child from a holistic whole child developmental lens is something that you are into, then make sure to check out this video that's on your screen now, all about overstimulation. It is going to blow your mind.